Oh, hey. It is September the 18th, and today we're going to continue our lecture on the progressive era. So, if you recall, last time we ended off with the United States is expanding its influence overseas, and that's what we really kind of kicked that off with is the Spanish-American War. America wins, rah rah shish kebab, and then we annexed some territories, which we discussed. And Teddy Roosevelt's super popular, and he is riding in with William McKinley as the vice president of the United States of America in the 1900 election. So let's see. There we go. So if you recall, McKinley, he's like an old school Republican. He kind of kept the status quo. He didn't really do a lot to break up like the major monopolies or protect consumers or workers or anything like that. But Roosevelt was put in the position as vice president essentially to kind of like take him out of the spotlight. But lo and behold, his stars aligned. As a campaign mate, Roosevelt made stunt speeches across America. So he's going out there to people, shaking hands, kissing babies, talking up a storm about how great McKinley is and how cool it would be if he was president again. But unfortunately, this is an era, one of America's many eras, where we have rampant acts of terrorism. So a lot of times we in America today, when we think of terrorism, we think of 9/11, we think of Islamic terrorists and stuff like that.
Can we write this down?
Absolutely, this is our new slide.
Oh.
But there was a time back in 1900 and around that time period where we had a lot of people who were anarchists and sometimes radical socialists who would do things like assassinate cops, priests, burn down churches, blow up police stations, attempt to assassinate government officials and stuff like that. So terrorism was pretty common. Like in the early 1900s, there was periods where places like New York City would have like a bombing a month, right? Like it was just happening a lot. They were like throwing dynamite at people's cars and all kinds of stuff. This is going to shape a lot of our immigration because it was believed that a lot of these anarchists were coming from Eastern Europe, such as this guy, Leon Solgas, I think that's how you say his name. He's going to be a disgruntled anarchist. An anarchist is somebody who believes there should absolutely be no government. They believe might makes right. Whoever's the strongest should be the one in charge. Well, he's going to be very bitter and upset. He's going to assassinate William McKinley. He's going to shoot him twice in the stomach before a guy dies from it. But according to the Constitution, when the president dies, who becomes president? Vice president. What happens if the vice president dies?
Then that's a boot for America.
Then it's the Speaker of the House. So the person who's in charge. Yeah, the person who's in charge of Congress, the Speaker of the House.
So like,
then I forgot who's in line after that.
So
Yeah, there's like a whole succession.
So
Right?
3 presidents were assassinated.
Yeah. Well, let me think.
Anyways,
Wait,
I love Joseph, but yeah.
Lincoln, McKinley,
It had to do with
Okay.
Kennedy. What's it, Carter? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, poor guy gets shot to death. So Teddy Roosevelt becomes president. So the Republican Party was freaking out because they did not want Teddy Roosevelt to be big in politics, but they accidentally made him president inadvertently. As president, Roosevelt was an outspoken opponent of monopolies. So that's major, super big businesses taking over everything. He also reasserted the U.S. authority of the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine is way back when we had a guy called President Monroe, made a statement saying European powers need to stay out of our half of the world. So they were saying, you can't colonize Latin America or mess with North America, stay out. Theodore Roosevelt's going to give new life to this. He's going to support progressive policies, like having merit-based worker or people in charge of things and workers, and the projection of U.S. power. So he wants us to be one of the big, great nations, kind of like England and France and other countries at this time. During the Spanish-American War, the U.S. realized that it faced strategic difficulties after the USS Oregon made a 14,000-mile voyage across South America. So strategic. That has to do with like our capabilities to defend ourselves or to conduct war. Well, we're a big nation. We go from sea to shining sea, so from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Well, most of our naval fleet was on our eastern coast, but in order to get that fleet to say like the California coast, they would have to make this 14,000-mile voyage, sailing all the way around South America and then all the way back up. That's a lot of fuel, a lot of time, a lot of wear, tear, and distance. So we're looking for an answer, and we're going to find it. Used to, yeah. But now there's like a little system that cuts through there. Kind of man-made river, kind of, sort of. It's called a canal. A little country called Panama. Yep, Panama Canal. That's right. And when y'all are ready, we'll move on to the next slide. We'll talk about Panama Canal. All right, ready. So, hey, here it is right here. So, the Panama Canal is there's other large canals, but essentially, in South America or Mesoamerica, below Mexico, the land gets very narrow in between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean before it really widens out when it connects to South America, right? So Panama had a very narrow point, and France actually offered to pay to create this canal. And there's other canals throughout the world, such as the Suez Canal in Egypt that connects the Mediterranean to the Arabic Sea. And this would cut that voyage by more than half, because then it could just sail right under Mexico, one ocean to the other. It has locks where walls will close up and fill in with water because of the elevation differences. That way you don't have to dig into the earth. And it's going to be very useful. We still use it today. We don't own it anymore, but it's the only time where the U.S. Navy allows like foreigners to actually drive our military ships, is whenever they go through this canal. So let's see a little bit about that. So the United States was desperate to find a way to connect its naval forces in the eastern half of the continent with the Pacific Ocean. Remember, after the Spanish-American War, we now have what we call protectorates lands. They're all the way close to Asia, like halfway there is Hawaii, and then of course you got the Philippines. They're all over here, so this will help us connect with them. The Panama Canal's construction was started way back in 1884, and the U.S. made attempts to purchase it, but the Panamanian government didn't really like that. However, they were experiencing a revolution. And so we helped the revolutionaries with supplies and cash. And the promise is like, hey, if we help you win, can we have the canal? They said, sure thing, guys. So we helped them win. They took over the government, and we got control of the Panama Canal.
Which slide are you?
Like a number?
Google slide.
Go to Google Classroom.
Yeah, it's the Google Classroom.
And then it'll say Professor Era and World Power Notes.
Uh-huh.
Slides or something like that.
Yeah, I think I saved it as a PDF.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't want y'all messing with my stuff. Yeah, it should all be there. So this is not the last time that American foreign policy is going to use some of the chaos and instability of South America to its own advantage. You're going to see a lot of that whenever you have the Cold War and the war on drugs and stuff like that. We'll get to that later. So thousands of U.S. laborers are going to go to Panama to help construct this 50-mile long waterway. It's going to be really, really dangerous work. It's very hot and humid, a lot of poisonous snakes, stuff like that. But the biggest killer was malaria. So mosquitoes was getting all over our folks, infecting with malaria, which could be deadly to a lot of people. It's still a pretty big killer today throughout the world. However, it is going to be completed, and this is going to be seen as a major success to people who want to see America become a first world power and compete internationally. However, isolationists are going to see this as us kind of getting involved in meddling with other countries' affairs to their detriment and our benefit. Eventually, and we'll talk about it later, we will relinquish control of the canal and all that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Spanish American
Okay.
one. So I don't know if you said this yesterday or not, I don't remember, but was this, so the Spanish American War, was it just like a big misunderstanding on how it started?
Well, I think what it was is a lot of it had a lot of people who were getting very, very upset, right? And so, yeah, a part of it was a misunderstanding, like when the boat sank.
Yeah,
So-
because it says historians and
So yeah, and it may have just been an accident, but that was like enough. Like they were like, "We're mad at you. We're tired of this." And then when that happened, they're like, "Ah!" Like, took the shirt off in the parking lot and started swinging at it. So it was just enough. It was the tipping point, and I mean, they didn't really have. The war started so fast. I mean, cooler heads didn't like preside, check out, do a good investigation and stuff like that. So. Which, I don't know, maybe they could have. But yeah, like, oh yeah, steamboats back then, they blew up all the time. They're going to get a lot safer once they start having diesel engines for the major boats. Diesel. And then like today, they have nuclear power plants for a lot of them, like aircraft carriers and a lot of our submarines. They got little nuclear reactors in there cooking up steam to make electricity to power those boats. That's how nuclear power plants work through, I think, fission or fusion. I don't remember which one. Like the process of that radioactive material going through that change makes so much heat, it boils water. The boiled water just kind of makes steam that spins a turbine to make electricity. Yeah, it's the same. Like spinning a turbine, that's the same way that dams make electricity and coal-fired plants make electricity and diesel plants. It's all just about turning a generator. And it's just you pick your way to turn that generator. Same with wind power. Just the wind power is turning the generator. So, same with your car when it's making electricity. Recharge that battery. Just turning that generator. But I mean, usually it's through steam. Welcome back. So, and y'all ready? We'll move on to the next one.
Ready?
Okay. Yeah? Okay, good. All right, so next one. Hey, what do we see here?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt again. He's kind of like a big deal, Pickle. Again. That's right. Huh?
Does he play baseball?
Yeah, but who's this? Who's he knocking out? The heir.
Oil company.
Yeah, oil trust. And remember, a trust is another word for monopoly for us. Railroad trust. Everything in general. So it's just. And so, well, this like goes back to a quote. He was really big into hunting and like African safaris. Like he loved big game hunting. If there was a big animal, he wanted to shoot it. But when he was in Africa, he said he met this old guy who gave him a saying. It's like speak softly and carry a big stick. And so he called his diplomacy big stick diplomacy. Like he's going to be nice to you, but if you don't behave, he's going to hit you with a big stick. So Teddy the Trust Buster. All right. A trust was a form of monopoly in which businesses tried to hide their power by grouping their interests within a market to cooperate, but also to prevent competition. All right, so what this means is this. Like, let's say you've got 20 railroad companies in the nation, but 3 of them are big. The 3 big ones get together in a dark room without telling anybody, and they agree to work together to crush the little companies so that they get to have all of the business, right? And that's illegal today, but they used to do this. And so he wanted to stop that. Roosevelt pledged to end the power of major trusts in the U.S. and reform business. It's like trusts aren't good. It reduces competition. It makes people so powerful that they can control the government even though they're not elected. And it also ends up raising the price on ordinary people. And it's only profiting a few. So it's like, this is un-American. He is the first president to use the long neglected Sherman Antitrust Act. Remember, it was passed a few presidents ago, but nobody ever really used it. But now he's got this law. He's actually going to use it to get rid of these guys. So he's going to break up the power of trust in America and brought a total of 44 antitrust suits to court against large railroad monopolies and regulating Standard Oil. Standard Oil was a big oil monopoly. So it's the Rockefeller one. So he was making sure that they were broken up, that they weren't the most powerful entities in the United States. His predecessor also passed the Interstate Commerce Act of 1887, that was McKinley, which Roosevelt used as a regulatory, no, that wasn't McKinley, that was before him, as a regulatory agency to monitor railroad pricing and oil business practices. So what we're seeing here is that he's preventing railroad companies and oil companies from doing shady business practices. Remember, I talked about before, railroad companies would give their friends discounts, but common people like farmers got charged full price. But they were doing this all undercover. They were doing this without telling anybody. And it's like, you can't do that, because what you're doing is you're only having the rich profit, and ordinary people can't even work their way out of it. So
they made it seem impossible.
yeah, I say like, yeah, remember like farmers were like super poor. They spent all their money in trying to get new equipment, and then they grew their stuff and they couldn't even sell it. And they're like, psh, what bomb? So, it's tough. It's real tough. So yeah, it's a big thing he's going to do is get rid of the trust. Remember, that was a big thing out of the Gilded Age, right before this. It's like you had the rise of big business, but big business got so big it crushed everybody else, and there was no ethics involved with it.
That's how you chose.
Huh? Yeah, it's a German last name. He's our first president to be from German ancestry. I think all the other presidents before him were English ancestry. Kennedy's going to be the first one from like Irish ancestry. His ancestors were like, not him, but Trump's his family was, his ancestors were from Scotland. Yeah, so he might be the first of Scottish. What? And I know, yeah, I mean, like Obama, his dad was from Kenya, and his mom, Kenya's in Africa.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I'm still learning. That's why I'm speaking.
I'm not sure about Bush or yes. I know Clinton is a English last name. It's a British last name. So
What was Obama's mom?
his mom was a white lady, but I don't know where her family came from. So you ready to move on?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the big part remember here is that Teddy Roosevelt was against monopolies, and sometimes monopolies came in the form of what we call a trust.
I'm ready.
That's a big point to remember off this. You don't need to write everything down off this.
I know. I didn't
Okay.
realize.
I'm not criticizing. All right. So
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt was super into things like boxing and wrestling. Yeah. He also invited Japanese, or he asked Japanese diplomats to send in instructors of judo and jujitsu too. So he was like, he loved that kind of stuff. For his time, he was really into fitness.
Was he voting?
Not by today's standards.
Oh.
You might not call him that, but he really called for good health. You gotta think about it, like as generations go by, like fitness is one of those things that kind of changes, you know? Like I don't know, like when I was your age, most people in their 40s kind of like let themselves go. Like, whatever, I'm not kidding anymore. You know, but nowadays it's more like people in their 40s are more expected to be a little healthier, I think. It's more kind of like I don't know. That's what I think. All right, so as outlined previously with Panama, the Roosevelt administration's foreign policy was guided by speak softly and carry a big stick principle. So it was like with Panama, we acquired Panama from Spain after the Spanish-American War. And during that time, we tried to install an American-style government there, but at the same time, we wanted to run it. This also happened in the Philippines, especially in the Philippines. Filipinos did not like that very much. They wound up, there was actually a lot of fighting with local Filipinos over this. Very bloody war, things like that. After McKinley's assassination, Roosevelt kept Secretary of State John Hay in his cabinet. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't Panama, but it was just the Philippines. My fault. Hay was known for his open door policy regarding China. So the open door policy, if you'll recall, I talked about China had a lot of trade restrictions on it. It wasn't allowed, European countries, especially Great Britain, were taking over parts of it and controlling it. Hay was like, hey, how about just let everybody trade with them? Now, he didn't bother to ask the Chinese what they thought about it, but it's going to be around this time period as well is when the U.S. is going to force Japan to start trading as well. We'll get to that later. Under this policy, the U.S. pushed for equal trading rights within China for all imperial powers, despite China's sovereignty, like I said. So this is just going to be another one of those acts, this and along with like the Opium Wars in China, where Great Britain is going to force China to allow England to sell opium to the Chinese people. A lot of Chinese people are going to be very upset about this. You're going to see this, it's kind of a religious movement, but it's also kind of like, I wouldn't call it a revolutionary movement, but like, what is it, like a partisan movement. That's where you have locals trying to fight a foreign power, called the Boxer Rebellion. And so during this time in China, and for a long time, they still practiced like a lot of local medicine that had to do with like potions and what they kind of thought of as like magic and stuff like that. And so the Boxer Rebellion is going to be led by a guy who's going to have the peasants like trained to fight like with sticks and hand to hand and stuff like that. And they're going to, like, I think it's either a potion or it's something they put on themselves they believe is going to protect them from bullets. And so they're going to go out. They're going to start killing anybody who reminds them of Western powers coming to the country to take over. But unfortunately, the easiest targets were like school teachers and pastors and stuff like that, missionaries. They're going to wind up murdering. Eventually, the U.S. and Great Britain are going to put this down with guns. And guess what? They weren't really bulletproof. So a lot of them are going to get shot to death. So Kung Fu is not stronger than bullets, unfortunately. So be careful. So U.S. forces aided in squashing this rebellion stood out as an example of the weakening of that country and foreign interests in the U.S. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about China later. It's not a world history course.
What's that bulletproof material? Is it Kevlar?
Yeah, Kevlar. It's bullet resistant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like fabric, right? It's like bullet.
Yeah, it's a fabric. It's kind of like polyester. If you look at it.
It's like, is it flexible?
Yeah, it can come in like cords and stuff like that, and you can harden it with materials kind of what they use to make helmets and stuff, right? Like the helmets are kind of like layered Kevlar that's glued together to make it be hard.
Like those have the helmets like level 2. Are the level 3s good? It's not
Level 3,
2s.
it depends because like the rating, that's like a national rating system based on what caliber it can stop, right?
I'm thinking it can stop like a 4 to 49 like a 5.
Well, it depends. Like, because like a sheet of Kevlar will not do anything.
Yeah, I think it will it stop like a 22?
It might, depends on, I mean, like it's at least level 1 rating. But like that's usually like something like a bouncer might wear, like a knife vest. You can't see it, but it keeps them from getting stabbed to death by some drunk while they're a bouncer, which is a dangerous job. Y'all ready to move on to the next one?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, this is gonna be our last one for the day. All right, so Teddy Roosevelt's also going to do things that's going to have him involved in ways that presidents have never been before. So under his presidency, we start moving out into the world. We start competing for foreign trade with places that otherwise we try to stay out of, like China and stuff like that. But also, he's going to get involved with local businesses and things like that for national security. So, at the famous coal strike of 1902. So the winter of 1902 was expected to be the worst on record for years and years and years. How most people in the Northeast kept their homes warm enough to survive was using coal. However, you had a massive strike of coal workers across different mines. And the owners of these mines would not budge on their demands. The union ordered the people to stop working. The nation was freaking out because they knew if they could not get coal production back up, people would freeze to death that winter. Lots of people. And also, not to mention, businesses would shut down. I mean, it was going to be really bad. So, Roosevelt's going to step in. He's going to listen to them talk. He's going to have them come to the White House, and they're going to hammer out a deal. And he's going to threaten the workers that if you don't get back to work after he hears them deny over and over again working with the owners, to bring in the army and to either force them to work or have soldiers dig up the coal. And so that kind of made them change their mind. So,
Kind of.
okay, yeah. So, he will put an end to the strike, and so people are like, "Wow, you saved America! Thank you." And so, okay, you're welcome. So, before this time, most presidents would have stayed out of it. They're like, it's not a presidential manner, because for the past over 100 years before this, presidents pretty much just kind of, that's not what they did. They signed laws. They could direct the military. They hosted parties and stuff like that. The president wasn't supposed to talk to workers and business owners and try to make them work together. Now, it's nothing new for the military because the Army had been doing things like building bridges, helping out with flood relief and stuff like that ever since that, forever. But what do they do? That's their last slide for the day. So, coal strike in 1902. So this is just an example of how the federal government is becoming more and more involved in all kinds of stuff. It's just growing and growing and growing. That is the last one. Okay, I did end it a little earlier than I meant to, but that's okay. We'll pick back up on Tuesday, and we're going to talk about the end of Roosevelt's presidency, and we're going to talk about the Taft administration. So we're going to pick back up on Tuesday, and y'all have a great weekend. Talk to you later. So, bless you.